one page, and I'll see how I can do it instead. Thank you, everyone, for coming here today. Would have wanted to share a day like this with you. It was fitting that I finished writing this little speech in Pop's armchair in his studio this morning. If any of you have taken a tour, you would agree that it was one of his favorite spots, overlooking Betty's garden, with the Clancy brothers playing softly in the bedroom. In that setting, I was reminded that we're not here to mourn, but to rejoice. To rejoice in the memories we all share of a truly amazing man. Being a good teacher and following in Pop's footsteps into the educational world, I looked at the definition of the verb to mourn. According to Webster's dictionary, to mourn is to express grief or sorrow. Eddie, Ed, or Pop, as I have always known him, would not have wanted us using that word today, that verb today. The only thing that Pop mourned was his relationship with pancakes. During the war, they were apparently so good that he never ate them again. Webster's indicates that a loss has occurred, and it most certainly has, resulting in tremendous sadness for those of us left behind. I need to remind you that that Pop was a happy man and rejoiced in things like wine and family and friends and art and a good pitched horse and most of all, his loving wife. He lived well, and in so doing touched all of those that crossed his path. Pop's love for life was reaching. Last night, when I checked into the Old Stone Inn up on the hill, a small pen and ink of the inn was it caught my eye. I couldn't place why it looked so familiar until later when I looked harder and saw familiarity in a bush. Concentric squiggly lines gave it away. I don't know what that means, but he did this thing with kind of concentric squiggly lines, and it was him, and I saw it. And of course, it was none other than Pop saying hello. His work and life are everywhere in this town. I know only a fraction from his stories, writings, and art, and the stories other people tell me of his life. What I do know is enough to know that he made me smile. And would want all of us smiling when we think of him. He would want us to have pinwheel cookie or a glass of wine and to rejoice in his life. We are here today not to mourn or be grief-stricken or to feel sorrow, but to celebrate. We are here to revel in the many joys that Eddie has brought us, to share stories about the ways Pop made life fun, about his Mickey Mouse wizard hat, or his teachings of the exact way to shuck corn, or even how to wrap stained glass. Last week I drove here to see Pop, and on the way I listened to one of Pop's beloved musicals, The Man of La Mancha. He played that song for me a lot when I was little. Pop always reached for the unreachable star. Ed would want all of us to do the same. Thank you, and enjoy the day.
Good morning. I'm the second eldest grandchild. My name is Brian. I'm one of Kathy's kids. I was asked to read a letter from a longtime family friend, Fred LeBron, today. He couldn't be here, but he wrote a nice little letter to share with all of you. So, attempting to say just a few heartfelt words in Ed's memory, I know can't do him justice. It will only rob this jewel of a man of all those facets I'm assured others will touch on. So I offer instead of an essence of his character, his essence of character. His overwhelming sense of humanity. He had a heart as big as the moon, a leprechaun's smile, a druid's bent for religion, and an unrelenting sense of humor that made him so much fun to be around. How that man made us laugh. Also, he was a reliable house painter and a truly wonderful teacher. And finally, for the record, if the bar is not open yet, this is not a sanctioned event. I believe the Horseshoe Throwers Handbook makes reference to that, or as Ed would say, at least it should. That was a letter from Fred. And on behalf of the grandchildren and the family, I'd like to thank everybody for being here today and showing your support and showing us honor for a great man. Thank you.
I couldn't hear in the back row. Can you hear me at all?
Yes, not really.
Okay, let's try this. I've not known Betty and Ed for as long as some of you, not since about 1985 when we met, when we had Cindy's Country Kitchen. And that was a small cafe where the Homefront Cafe now sits. We became friends. I'm going to tell you some different stories and memories that I have, other than the art world of Ed's, which I so admired. They talked us into going to Foxwood one time. Do you know what Foxwood is? It's the big casino. Jack and I had never been there before, but we went. And Jack won big. He felt he had his luckiest time in life, and that was it. I think he won $10,000, which Jack said, I don't want anybody in Altamont to know that. Ed came right back and painted a big sign. Other times when we would visit them in St. Simon's Island, we went out on the boat, which they liked. We'd go out for dinner on the boat and a little bit of slot machines. Jack and I always seemed to get sick, headaches and sick. But we knew Betty and Ed liked it, so we would go until we started to win. And then you don't have headaches and you don't get sick anymore. So that's a lesson that we learned also. Another time we also had some fun. We went to Disney World together. Now in Disney World there's a place called Splash Mountain. I'm not a great one for different rides or anything like that. Ed and Betty were daredevils. They're roller coaster buffs, believe it or not. Well, I want to tell you, the Splash Mountain looked like it could have been a roller coaster to me. And I didn't want to go up, and Ed kept saying, there's such artwork up there, Cindy, you will love it. You really will love it. Rare Rabbit is up there, and he named all the characters. So I decided I would go up. And it was beautiful outside, but as we came down, I thought, oh no. All the way, and Betty was cute. She put Ed and Jack in the front seat so we wouldn't get splashed so hard in the back seat. But I'll tell you, all the way down that ride, I think the words out of my mouth were not good, and it sounded like something like, oh, shoot. I have never been on Splash Mountain since then, never been on a roller coaster. I'm for the lower level. When we opened the cafe in 1997 as the Homefront, Ed designed the sign and the outside painting of the building. I didn't know what colors to paint the outside of the building, and Ed finally said, use your colors, use the red, white, and blue, and he designed it and had it painted that way, and I've always appreciated that. With the World War II Memorial, when the Homefront wanted to raise funds, and we were trying to do that through inspiring the community, we had a raffle, and Ed offered to have the first prize as a painting. Whoever won the raffle would receive a painting of their house, courtesy of Ed Cowley. We did pretty well for that as a community. I think we raised over $17,000, and that was pretty neat. Betty and Ed were always supportive. From her gardens, Betty would share her flowers. Ed would participate with other veterans to welcome school classes to the Homefront. When Jack and Mark started to renovate the military equipment, he was so fascinated by that. He would be up there watching them and whatever, and I used to call it the junk in my driveway. And Ed carefully told me, it's not junk, it's art. So now I refer to it as art in my driveway. I thoroughly have appreciated Ed, his sense of humor, his family, his work. And I think that the people in Altamont have a great deal to be grateful for what he has left with us. These past years, and especially these past months, have been hard, difficult, and draining on their whole family. I pray that time will heal all wounds and leave you with only precious memories. And to you, Ed, dear friend, I say goodbye and thank you.
Another one of Pop's former students, and she became the chairman or the director of the art gallery as well. To speak, Mary Joy.
Yes.
There she is. Thank you so much.
As Ed would say, and don't worry, this is longer than it looks. So it had, in the exciting early days of the establishment of the art department at the new university at Albany, it was then called SUNY, coupled with the proximity to the powerful New York City art world, its influences and museums, it was challenging indeed to teach contemporary art classes. Also involved with creating a new art department, hiring new faculty members, and one of them is here, Robert Cartnell. I saw you come in somewhere. Bob was here from the very beginning. Dealing with the new administration, and we all know what that's like, it was a task ready-made for Ed Cowley. Ed was intelligent, confident, and creative. He also had a visionary nature with a visionary's enthusiasm, coupled with a generous, helping and chutzpah, not discouraged by others' cautionary tales. And after all, he was Irish. He could do anything. He could deal with the wishes of the powerful New York State Governor, Nelson Rockefeller, who, when he was touring the nearly completed art building, turned and asked, "Where's the art gallery?" None had been planned or budgeted. But no problem. Ed said, "Just remove 2 floors from the end of the building," and voila, we had a 3-story art gallery. Of course, no one noticed that there were no walls left on which to hang the art. It was all windows. But Ed said, "No problem, we'll deal with that later." Right then, Ed had another challenge. He had to find a gallery director with the skill and knowledge to run an art gallery in an academic setting. And he found the perfect one. His friend Don Moshon, an artist and architect, who after many, many hours of persuasion, fortified with many bottles of wine, he coached right off the faculty of RPI, one of Ed's many shining moments. As a teacher and mentor to the students entering the new university, Ed was generous with his time and talent. He was everything, to be heavily influenced by what they had just seen. Nor would he publicly denounce your work as being derived from the ideas of others. His students loved him for that, and for his constant, gentle guidance. Excuse me. Helping us to find our own inner voice and to use it when expressing your own ideas. He took an interest in our lives off campus as well, and we were frequent visitors to his and Betty's home on the hill in Altamont, a place I'd never heard of before then. We were invited to participate in his annual event at the outdoor contemporary comment exhibitions held in Altamont, which I'm sure many will remember with fondness, maybe not. Later, when I was on the staff at the University Art Gallery as its assistant director, it was a frequent drop-in to the office, if only for a few minutes, and always left us laughing. He and the director, Nancy Little, were great friends. We always knew that Valentine's Day was nearing when Ed would stop by to show us the latest huge, extravagantly decorated, heart-shaped box of chocolates he had just scored in his lunch hour for Betty. I once asked him what he did with all the numerous decorated box lids, and he replied, with his impish grin, "We have them hanging up all over the house." I think he regarded them as American folklore. Ed would also drop by just to make Joanne Liu, the gallery secretary, dissolve into laughter by exhibiting his famous penchant for wearing mismatched colored socks. He always delivered the straight-faced line, "I have another pair at home just like these." One day we needed some signage for the gallery, and we called up Ed to see if he would come down and do some for us in this easily recognized format. He came down with a fistful of high-colored magic markers and sat at Nancy's desk with the signboards. We continued chatting with the visit to the gallery. But in the background, we could hear the constant squeaking of Ed's wielding the magic markers. Squeak, 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 squeak. So we turned and looked over at Ed, who looked up over his glasses and said, "Some of my signs sound better than others." So we dissolved into laughter, of course. In the fall of 1987, Nancy Little, the museum director, oh yeah, curated the largest one-person exhibition of the work of Ed Cowley for the University Art Museum. It was a labor of love for the museum staff, many of whom were former students, to move, along with Ed and his friends and family, much of his work to the museum, including his famous stained glass room. Opening reception plans were made, a special cake was made to look like the university, and large crowds of devoted fans were anticipated for the opening day event. The date? Sunday, October 4th. For those of you not remembering that day, let me read the broadcast news weather report for October 4th. An unprecedented early season snowstorm of the snow with trees in full leaf, which caused extensive power outages lasting up to 2 weeks and downing thousands of trees. The surprise of the snowstorm wasn't even forecast. Of course, the show went on. Four-wheel vehicles and chainsaws were called into service. Ed perseveres and attributed it all to Irish luck and made it to the opening. Many did not, however, but the days and following weeks of the exhibition drew the largest turnouts of visitors we had ever had. The gallery was filled each day by students, current and past, and with visitors, lovers of his art, and of Ed. Whenever Ed's work is on an exhibition, crowds follow. The contributions Ed Cowley made to the art program at the University of Albany, and indeed to the university itself, last until this very day. On closing, I just wanted to show you two things of a personal note. In 1997, when I was the museum's director, I curated an exhibition for the museum entitled Memory and Mourning, Shared Cultural Experiences. It was an exhibition which explored how artists worldwide and the practices of different cultures deal with memory, loss, and death. Ed and Betty went to the exhibition, and continuing his long practice of expressing support to his former students, he wrote to me this tender note, and I would like to share just a part of it. And he sent it on a beautiful drawing of the house where he colored with the fall colors on the trees. And he wrote, "Dear Mary Jo, yesterday was the 10th anniversary of my Ice Storm exhibition, and I was thinking of your museum, and I decided it would be not out of place with me to tell you how much I'm impressed with the current exhibit. It really fulfills the best sense of what a university exhibition space can achieve. By that it means it involves so many disciplines in a thought-provoking way. Everyone on your staff should be complimented." He went on to say it was a tough theme, but furthermore, I'm hand-coloring my tree card with a few of the fall colors, possibly mourning myself, the passing of summer, but more likely celebrating the fact that the ice storm was 10 years ago. So there it is, a memory that I can work on forgetting. And one more thing. Only 11 years ago, we moved to Altamont. My husband and I commissioned Ed to make a stained glass window, for a 4-foot stained glass window for our home. Excuse me. So, typical of Ed, he wrote a whole story of the window. It's a view of Maple Avenue as you look towards the gazebo and the escarpment. And he wrote 2 words about the window and the story, but then he also included this legend of the glass. And I just want to leave you with a few wonderful Ed Cowley isms. The perspective is meant to be loose and fluid, and I hope it works, with lively uncertainty, equivocal light. The truck and cars are a glassy test of the dot plan. They are trained to avoid the curves. The curves don't want to be hit either, of course. Little holes in the glass are intended to provide a touch of sparkle. So that's the story, in case there are questions. Thanks, Ed.
We brought along, this is a painting of the train station from 1966, and it seems so appropriate for a number of reasons. First, he loved Altamont so much and all the buildings, and he worked to preserve the train station. his friends here, I see some of them here, and the Alpine Planning Association. And also a train station. A station is a platform. It's a point of departure for a new journey. And my guys, I find a new journey, so it seems like a good thing. We have little Ed Cowleys for each of you. So we have Jim and Wanda were fabulous, and they quickly helped us get these together. The boy's father had taken a picture of it, so Lou Hall, so we had, luckily had this, and we were able to put this together. Down the back is the Parting Glass, which is a song sung at the close of the night in an Irish pubs. And it speaks about life and something that my mother and my father sung that they enjoyed very much. And it sings about sweethearts, and so we included a picture of my mother and father together with sweetheart. And it's not the standard memorial card with the one photo of the one person, but as Jim Gardner said, he always did things his own way. So we did it totally. We did it different. So please come and take one at the end. As you know, my father was in Patton's Army, the 94th Infantry Division. There's his hat hanging there. And his mother, he wrote home throughout the war, so his mom knew that he was okay. He wrote home on little scraps of paper or anything he could. I believe it's one of the largest collections in the country of letters. It'll eventually be going to the Library of Congress, which is quite an honor. It's where the Declaration of Independence is, so it's in good company. My grandmother also saved a scrapbook and everything he sent home. And in that scrapbook we found this letter that Eisenhower had written on VE Day. And Dad used to say you couldn't get away from Eisenhower, that he was his boss for so many years. In World War II, he was his general, and afterwards, when he went to Columbia, he was the chancellor, and then he became his president. So, but he loved this letter, and his words, we didn't realize what a fine writer Eisenhower was. So we found this letter, and the words, some of them are more commonly used now, but in 1945, I think they were more powerful. Anyways, I just wanted to read it to you because I read it to my father. We probably read this letter 6 times a year, minimum. And I'd read it, and he'd laugh. And so please let me read it to you. It was sent from the 94th Infantry Division headquarters to every member of the command on May 9th, 1945. The crusade on which we embarked in the early summer of 1944 has reached its glorious conclusion. It is my especial privilege, in the name of all nationalities represented in this theater of war, to commend each of you for your valiant performance of duty. Though these words are feeble, they come from the bottom of a heart overflowing with pride in your loyal service and admiration for you as warriors. Your accomplishments at sea, in the air, on the ground, in the field of supply have astonished the world. Even before the final week of the conflict, you had put 5 million of the enemy permanently out of the war. You have taken in stride military tasks so difficult as to be classed by many doubters as impossible. You have confused, defeated, and destroyed your savagely fighting foe on the road to victory. You have endured every discomfort and privation and have surmounted every obstacle ingenuity and desperation could throw in your path. You did not pause until our front was firmly joined up with the Great Red Army coming from the east and other Allied forces coming from the south. Full victory in Europe has been achieved. Working and fighting together in a single and indestructible partnership, you have achieved perfection in unification of air, ground, and naval power that will stand as a model in our time. As we celebrate victory in Europe, let us remind ourselves that our common problems of the immediate and distant future can best be solved in the same conceptions of cooperation and devotion to the cause of human freedom as have made this expeditionary force such a mighty engine of righteous destruction. Oh, my father loved words, and there's some powerful phrases in there, and he'd just laugh. But he did, with those letters, he had written home and spoke of the atrocities, and we pursued Liberator status for the 94th Infantry Division. It never came about, and it's a freak of history. As everyone knows, the 94th led the drive to the Rhine, so it's only logical that they would have been recognized as liberators, but the brass of the 94th were all long dead, and the 94th itself had been decommissioned. So, anyways, my father and his buddy Tom Manthey, much to their, they didn't want to do it, but we were pursuing this liberator status, and when he realized that if they were recognized as liberators, that the 94th flag would be flown at the Holocaust Museum and in the rotunda on the, I'm so sorry, it's a Jewish holiday of remembrance. Once a year.
Yom Kippur.
Is it Yom Kippur? Anyways, he said he would do that for his comrades, and he and Tom painfully wrote their testimony of the day that they came upon. They came upon 3 camps, but the one camp that was filled with the dead and dying. And it was, I guess, probably cathartic for him, because he hadn't spoken of that since World War II. And same for Tom. And I had to call Tom this week and tell him that his buddy, whom he had spent 2 years aggressively involved with saving his life daily, had passed on. I didn't seem at all. It didn't seem right for me to be sharing that news with that man who had spent so much time into whom I owe my very existence. So, anyways, here's to the 94th and greatest generation of the world, the greatest generation for my father. And I was very proud and always knew that he was a hero. Thank you.
Is there, when you said about the others, what happens outside the vegetable?
Oh, yes.
Do we get drinks and go out
I would like to ask if right now we're done with our portion, and if there's anyone here that would like to say something, please come up, and we'd love to hear from you. Oh, great. Afterwards, after we're gonna, we'll be going outside for the military honors. And then there'll be the meal afterwards. And please stay.
How about refreshments?
Didn't I meant that? Didn't I already mention this?
Yes, you did. No, I missed it. I didn't see it.
Yeah, so they'll be drinking and food. Hold on. I don't know if the bar's open yet, but if you need to take a break and go in the bar, please do.
He had said he was bringing stuff out, that's why
Oh,
I didn't get it.
but if anybody would like to speak.
Have seen me over the years. I came here in 1966 to the university to help set up the geography department. And almost immediately, the first person I met in our building was Nancy Little, who was striving to put together the art collection that was to be installed, not in that building, as you just heard. So I wanted to be sure to mention, I know that Chuck Little is here. That was one of the first great moments of my life, and it was related surely to the work that Ed was embarking upon. But most important, something that has not been mentioned yet, is that Ed also had another dimension of his life that was tremendously important and became formative in my own career, and that was to set up an environmental studies program, which was a multidisciplinary program at the State University and also involved RPI and Union and St. Rose, I'm not sure, but a number of other universities in the Capital District. Lou Ismay is here. I spoke earlier with John Scott, who was instrumental in that. Don McKinley was a faculty member also. But that was a very inspiring moment in my life. I was very privileged to participate in starting that center and carrying it forward, and it meant much in the development of my own career, which spans about 35 or 40 years working in an environment. So I thank Ed for his vision, his humor, his great patience dealing with the university, polity, and community in holding that together. Also, I should mention another person who was involved in that, who recently passed away, Professor Richard Kelly, who was also an inspiration to me. But I thank Ed very much for the twinkle in his eye and the great spirit that he brought.
Thank you.
My name is Melissa Hale Spencer. I'm the editor of the Altamont Enterprise, and I got to know Ed because after he spoke at Cindy's Homefront, we just heard about that a bit, talking to children about war, he came into the newspaper and said, you know, he thought there were some things people should know, and he wrote a series of columns, and it was a thrill, because as his daughter said, he cared about words so much, and he'd bring them in handwritten, they looked like artwork, and piece things together. Then he did a second series about art, and he hung art around the village in different places. One was right here, the VFW, and he loved to quote. One of the members here said, that looks more like the Post than the Post. I wrote an elegy for Ed Cowley. I woke at 6 o'clock today to find that all the world was gray. The leaves, the trees, the sky, and I were held in bleak October sway. But when you paint the sullen sky, there's more than gray to greet the eye. Your subtle hues are rich and vast, as radiant light makes hope feel nigh. Your wife, your love, plucks treasures from your past. Your life has ended what will last. Your grace, your words, your wit, your art, these are things we will hold fast. Shamrock, horseshoe, bronze star, glass mart, of the whole each were a part. But from the start it was your heart. What matters most, it is your heart.
My name is Lou Ismay. My name is Lou Ismay. Met Ed 1957. An important friend in my life. Ed probably never did realize the importance of what he created. Steve just mentioned it. It was known around the country before Earth Day. It actually started to operate in 1969. 2.5 to 3 years before that, I was starting a new job, my first day at work, ready to leave the house. Received a phone call from the personnel department at SUNY. Would I be interested if money was found to run the program? My answer was yes. Money was found, and we literally started in 1 week. Now, it's not important except to say that it was known in England, it was known in Israel, it was known in the new university in northern Germany. I don't remember if it was Bremen or wherever it was. But the word spread, and the students spread the word through a Protect Your Environment club. It's affected the lives of many unknown thousands, because occasionally there's a message from somebody and what they're doing. So it's spread. But more important, the memory of Ed. I'll tell it in some of the paintings that I remember hanging in the outdoors on the trees. See, these were, if you haven't, many of you probably, some of you probably have not seen them, but they were painted on pieces of cardboard, sometimes large or small. One had to do with matching socks, and the title was True Conservatives Wear Matching Socks. Another one about Willie Horton. He was a criminal, he was in jail, and Ed had a picture of representation of Willie behind bars, and Willie had his thoughts about banks, and the title was, right, why did you do this, or something like that, but the answer was, because the money, that's where the money is, in the banks. That's why you got the banks. Ed was aware of the issue of hard hats versus long hairs, which raged sometime around the 1970s. Long hairs were the guys who were the tree huggers. And the hard hats were the working men who opposed him. Ed's comment on that issue was a picture of a Viking with horns on the head, and the title was Hard Hats and Long Hairs. Talking about a combination. I can remember Ed sitting there in the evening sometimes, or whatever, just being present, and in the background you could all hear clink, clink, as the horseshoes hit the peg. And Ed, Don Moshon drew a cartoon about Ed Cowley. There was a time when there was another kind of strike. And it showed a German soldier with the typical World War I spiked helmet, and a British soldier with the typical hard hat that they wore at that time. And the title was, you'll agree, no matter who wins this war, we won't let Ed Cowley into our veterans organization. VFW would allow that, you're welcome. So he was very proud. He had peas on the table, growing in his garden, before anybody else could make that statement in the area. He had to be number one. He went through a phase at one time painting some marvelous designs on golf tees. That was about the time they took up golf as a hobby. And he had the art department had a golf team that challenged others in the area, not just in the area, but in other parts of the state too. The railroad station was his idea to save it. And then each contributed $100 to buy a bond, to buy the station. And for $5,000 and a lot of hard work, we had a mayor at the time, Larry Warner. I remember Larry being up on the roof. He was the only one who readily available who knew how to repair slate roofs, and that's what he did. But there was strife in the village at one time. Ed conceived the idea of having flower boxes at the entrance into the village, every road, with a welcoming. The flower boxes were frequently destroyed, vandalism. Larry Warner and his sons stayed up all night long repairing the boxes so that in the morning they would be in place around the village. It'd be kind of nice to have that happen in the village, I think. And the last thing probably was his sense of humor. And the way Steve mentioned, the way he dealt with the administration at the university was just marvelous. I was in the office one day, Don Marchand and all asked us to come in. One of the professors was there. The new dean was on the phone, questioning why there were so many A's and A pluses in this professor's class. And the conversation went back and forth. And answer was given. Ed was the only one on the phone. And there was discussion about academic quality and so forth. And Ed's response to the dean, the parting thing, just before he left, and it might happen again, which startled the dean to end the conversation. So a little bit of my memories of Ed, and probably others with memories of the paintings and so forth. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Hear me. I bought that poster. I have it. It's 1 minute away. As soon as we break for the bar, I will walk through my backyard and I will bring that poster for you. What it says is, the Vikings wore long hair and hard hats as well. Before it was popular. I have it. I'll bring it here. First Walter, and I live right over there.
Nancy Murphy. I'm one Mrs. Murphy. The other Mrs. Murphy sat over here next to the VFW for 8 years while Doc put this boat together with much encouragement from Ed. He was there at least 2 or 3 times a week, checking on the progress, which sometimes was not too good, and sometimes, well, when the boat fell over, that wasn't too good either. But he was a wonderful friend to Doc and me, and he made 3 stained glass windows for our boat, which when we sold the boat, or when we gave it away actually, we had taken out. And he was a wonderful man, a sense of humor, and Doc and he were like kindred Murphy Irish souls. And Ed also helped me break the sex barrier by joining the horseshoe pit. He encouraged that, so I did it. Some guys weren't too happy, but that's true.
My name is Richard Cobb. I'm a foreigner from the city of Albany. And I went to the Millen School, and in 1952 I was yearbook editor, and Ed came up from Columbia and became yearbook advisor. And we played golf together with Jim Cochran. I don't know if you remember Jim, the English professor. And
Ed was a great horseshoe player, a great teacher, a great artist. When it comes to golf, that's another question. But he had a very creative golf game, and usually the ball would land in front of him rather than behind him. I have in my living room a abstract of a golf course that Ed gave me for when I graduated from medical school, and I really treasure that. Thank you.
I'm John Scott. I don't want to keep you from the meatloaf or the beer. But a couple of things haven't been said about Ed. We all know he was one of the greatest organizers ever. He organized the horseshoe league, the golf league at the university, which is still going on. It's called the State Swingers. I'm the secretary of the league, and it's diminishing quite a bit. But I first met Ed on the golf course, and he would organize 2 foursomes every week. I think it was Friday. And the bet was a dime a hole. And after about 6 or 7 years, I said to Ed, "So you think we maybe should raise it to a quarter?" He said, no, a dime is traditional. That's the extra. I spent time with Ed at Farm Neck Golf Course. Bought this vineyard. He had a little, they had, Cowley's had a little camp on the playgrounds there. We started out paying $17. Ed would get us on as members. When Clinton started playing there, and now Obama, it's up over $100 to play that now. I think it's probably more by now. Ed organized quite a few things at the university. One of them was the Environmental Decisions Commission, which tried to impose restrictions on what could be done environmentally at the campus. We managed to save the little ponds that was there. They were going to put the alumni house right next to the pond. And the lasting memory of that commission, he got me to be the chair of that commission a few years later, was the speed bumps, and they're still there. But the environmental studies program started with Ed and Lou Ismay. Lou Ismay ran the environmental forum, which in my opinion was the best course ever at the University at Albany. He brought in guest speakers from all around the region, very good speakers, and Lou would stay with the students hour after hour into the wee hours of the evening. I just wanted to mention mainly about Ed's golf. I also played golf with him down at St. Simon's Island, which was stayed there for a few days, which was nice. Thank you.
I hardly echoes what's been said about Ed. It was just great from a personal perspective. He was pretty much instrumental in so many different individual stories in the village. And ours was one of them. My mom and dad started the Altamont Manor in 1964. And things were a little tough. It was a new place, and back then, this Altamont really were considered the boondocks. And it was always tough getting people up there. And Ed came up with Betty, and they really loved it, and it struck up such a rapport with mom and dad. And it was almost like a mission for him as he went back to the university. I sort of think of Ed as a pebble. You drop it in the pond, and the ripples just kept going out further and further and further. And I think he was, as much as anyone, responsible for the success of the manor, and the ability for us to then, as the next generation, to take that and keep it going. Slightly different venue, but nonetheless, it's still the ultimate manner, and I think Ed, more than anyone, was responsible for that, and I just wanted to say thank you personally for his particular efforts.
Thank you.
My name is Norman Swanson. I have my PhD, and I mention that because I went to Albany State Teachers College in 1958 after 4 years in the Navy and a year and a half of college, and I was married. And some of you may have heard of my wife, Shirley Swanson, who taught kindergarten and first grade here from 58 to 61, and then moved down to Westmere Elementary. She's deceased, been almost 20 years. But when I came in 58, I think Ed was the only art teacher there, and then Bill Wilson came like in 1960, and he was quite a character himself. But I used to listen to, when I was studying math, I wanted to be a math teacher, and it turns out that I took art, as many classes as I could while I was there, and I really learned a lot from him. In fact, I kind of copied his style with the lines all drawn in, and since I taught mathematics, ended up at Hudson Valley Community College, and I do numbers with the style here of Ed. I had 2 of his pictures at home up on the wall, a huge one, and then a pastel of the Altamont Fair buildings in there. And I think the picture that is bigger than this one is oil, but I think it's Main Street or Maple Avenue, I guess. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, I'm going along and I'm enjoying art, and math was a little more difficult to do than art, but I thought of changing to become an art teacher. And the trouble is, because I was married and all that, and I'd lost almost a year of credits because they wouldn't take math. It was a thing I'd have to move. We'd have to move to college. I had to move to another college to finish up, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? Because I really love art, and I was 10 years the president of Albany Arts Group. I just gave it up a year ago. But so I've done art and math all my life, so to speak, and I've developed a few problems, but part of the short-term memory loss here as I look around. I just turned 80 a month ago, so, and being a math person, my 65th birthday was on 9/9/99. Can't get better than 999s, I figure. And, what happens is only 12 times in the course of a century, when if you're born on 111 or 222 or 333, and I happen to be one of those, I thought mathematically that's great. But what was I going to say? Oh, September, I guess you know, I'm ad-libbing it a little now. September means 7, October means 8, November means 9, December means 10, but we obviously have shifted 2 months, and that's because the Romans only had 10 months of the year named, and then they left it blank in what we call January, February, so when the Caesars came in, they shifted everything. But also September is the only month with 9 letters in it. It's the only month that has the same number of letters in it as does the month that it is. In other words, May is the 5th, but May is only 3 letters, something like that. That's kind of trivia I like to and so anyway, when I told my wife, Shirley, about going to art school and all that, and I said, I don't think we can do it. And she says, oh, take it as an avocation, not a vocation. Stay with mathematics. And I'm glad I did, because our teachers weren't too good off. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say was, I took all these classes, and I got my bachelor's and my master's. And then when I got my doctorate, I came over, I got a sabbatical from Hudson Valley in 84, 85, and I had only 12 hours I had to take each semester, so I filled in with glass, stained glass from his teaching that he had, and I learned how to do stained glass. But then the minute he retired, I think it was '87, they got rid of the whole glass program. I don't think it ever came back. As soon as he went out the door, so did the stained glass classes go out the door. But it really grew tremendously over the years. So, okay, that's some of my memories of the particular.
Thank you.